Together, they sold 30 million albums, took home every accolade imaginable, and established themselves as the greatest pair in the nation. However, Ronnie Dunn just disclosed the true cause of Brooks and Dunn's 2009 breakup. They said it was a burnout, but it wasn't. He made the decision to speak the truth at the age of 72, battling health problems and acknowledging his own mortality. Nashville insiders gasped at what he stated about those last few years. Not even Kix Brooks anticipated this. Fans' preconceived notions of the greatest successful collaboration in country music are altered by the revelation. As they say, music comes from the soul, but for Ronnie Dunn, it came from honky-tonks and oil fields, as well as church pews. Ronnie, who was born on June 1, 1953, in the small Texas town of Coleman, was torn between two worlds. His mother instilled traditional Baptist principles and gospel in their family, while his father, a rough-edged truck driver, played a honky-tonk guitar. Ronnie was in smoky bars one minute, watching his dad play. The following Sunday morning, he participated in a church choir. Everything he became would be shaped by that odd harmony between the holy and the boisterous. It was more than background noise. It marked the start of a lifelong passion for music. However, stability was not the goal. Ronnie did not simply change schools a couple of times. By the time he graduated, he had attended 13 different schools in Texas and Oklahoma because he moved so frequently. 13, this resulted in 13 new groups of friends, instructors, regulations, and local radio stations. There may be a town that is in the country. Another that's all about blues or gospel. He was not broken by the frequent uprooting. It made him bigger. Like mementos, he collected up various sounds and styles. He learned something new at every school. Additionally, it provided him with something that most artists never receive: range. Actual, earned range. While other children were daydreaming about electric guitars, Ronnie picked up the saxophone, an instrument that most country music artists never play. He joined the band at his school and learned how rhythms hit and melodies flowed. Although it was training, it wasn't glamorous. At home, his father would return exhausted from a long drive or a day working in the oil fields, but still eager to teach Ronnie a few chords. There was no official music schooling. It was superior. It was heart and guts from the actual world. Ronnie realized that music was more than just a pastime. It served as a lifeline. Despite working two hard jobs, his father found time to play. That lesson stuck. Ronnie believed that perhaps psychology was his calling in the early 1970s. Though his heart had other ideas, he enrolled at Abilene Christian University. He was slipping into bars to perform, taking in the nightlife while singing to people who were completely emotional and half-drunk. However, there were stringent rules at the university. It wasn't only that playing in bars went against the school's principles. He was expelled as a result. That was the time. He had the option to tidy up, return to school, and be cautious. However, he didn't. He stepped up his musical efforts, even at the expense of everything else. That did not, however, imply that he abandoned his faith. Ronnie was a youth minister and music leader at a small Avoca church when he was still a student. He wasn't merely performing music. He was directing worship, assisting others, and fostering a greater sense of connection. His voice wasn't the only thing affected by that encounter. It molded his spirit. For him, gospel was more than just a genre. It was home. The pain, the hope, and the fire are still audible in his singing. Ronnie had moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, during the early 1980s. Tulsa provided him with fire, if Texas provided him with roots. The city was a hive. The music scene was a chaotic mashup of southern rock, blues, and country, and clubs like Tulsa city limits were filled. Dunn was performing night after night, right in the middle of it. For groups of more than 2,000 persons at times. It wasn't glitzy. It was a grind. It was the ideal testing ground, though. A music was dead if it didn't get people dancing. It's as easy as that. Ronnie learned things from those dance floors that no classroom could ever teach him. The art of moving people. How to make them feel. Then the crazy turn occurred. A Marlboro talent hunt form was discovered at a petrol station in 1988 by Jamie Oldacre, a drummer who had previously performed with Eric Clapton and Bob Seger. He entered Ronnie's name without even asking. Despite his initial lack of interest, Ronnie submitted a demo. Rough versions of Boots, Scootin' Boogie, and Neon Moon were featured in that demo. He advanced to the finals. He prevailed. The reward for that victory was a trip to Nashville, as well as a recording session with Scott Hendricks, the producer. And everything changed after that session. After introducing Ronnie to Tim Du Bois of Arista, Hendricks matched him with Kix Brooks, another struggling artist. Lightning struck in a bottle during that meeting. Dunn and Brooks were well known in just 2 years. But years of rejection before the #1 hits, the arenas, and the trophies. She Put the Sad in All His Songs and It's Written All Over Your Face were two of Ronnie's singles released in the early 1980s after he signed with Churchill, MCA. Not bad, but not good enough, both peaked at number 59. Even when no one seemed to care, Ronnie continued to work hard, write songs, and perform live. Those songs came and went. Two guys in their 40s were on the verge of abandoning their solo careers in 1990. Both Kix Brooks, a Louisiana composer known for his boisterous energy, and Ronnie Dunn, a Texas-born vocalist with a large voice and a spiritual heart, had spent years striving for fame. They had performed in small clubs, composed songs for other people, and been repeatedly turned down. They were strangers to one another. They had no intention of finding a mate. However, destiny had other ideas. Tim Du Bois, a record executive, noticed something that neither of them did that same year. Perhaps, he reasoned, they would be more powerful together than apart. So he set up a lunch meeting. They both didn't want to be there. "We don't want to do this," Kix even stated. "We are strangers to one another. This is simply ridiculous, really." However, something clicked. That uncomfortable meal became a songwriting session. Then another. Additionally, they wrote 2 songs at the end of the week that would serve as the foundation for their legacy. Brooks and Dunn's album Brand New Man, which was published on August 13, 1991, was a huge hit. On the country charts, 4 consecutive songs reached the top spot. Neon Moon, My Next Broken Heart, But Scootin' Boogie, and Brand New Man. Neon Moon gave heartbreak a new hymn, while But Scootin' Boogie started a line dancing frenzy across America. In the United States alone, the album sold more than 7 million copies. Although that type of launch was unprecedented in the country music industry, it was just the start. Their popularity was based on difference more than just popular songs. Ronnie's voice was so sweet and heartfelt that it could turn any ballad into a prayer. Grit was in the Kix. Charm and unadulterated strength. Despite the fact that their voices shouldn't have complemented one another, they did. Kix could light up a stage, and Ronnie could carry a slow song. They blended energy and emotion in a way no one else could, covering almost 3 octaves together. Their writing was lightning fast, too. They had already written My Next Broken Heart and A Brand New Man within days of our meeting. Neon Moon and Boots Scootin' Boogie were written by Ronnie alone. They seemed to have finally met the ideal artistic match after waiting their entire lives for it. Their accolades increased along with their notoriety. Globally, Brooks and Dunn sold more than 30 million records. Their sales surpassed those of any other genre, making them the best-selling country duo in history. They took home 18 Country Music Association Awards and 30 Academy of Country Music Awards. They won CMA Vocal Duo of the Year 14 times in a row, missing only 1 year, from 1992 to 2006. No one has ever been close. New performers appeared year after year, tried their hand at it, and took a shot, but none were able to defeat Brooks and Dunn. Like a mountain amid a storm, they persevered through the shifting trends in country music. It wasn't a stroke of luck. Every arena's back row was filled with Dunn's voice, hard effort, and unadulterated ability. They had equally unbelievable figures. They collaborated to release multi-platinum albums such as Brand New Man and The Long Haul. Millions of copies are flying off the shelves as a result. What about the hits? 24 tracks at the top of the charts. Not 10, not 24. Maria, My Dear, took the charts by storm in 1996. The song that was played the most in 2001 was Ain't Nothing About You. Red Dirt Road was more than just a song. It reverberated for a whole generation. They took over the radio with song after song. It seemed like every release would be a success. Ronnie Dunn was more than just a vocalist. He played anthem after anthem like a machine. They didn't simply show up when it came to touring. Tens of thousands of people crowded in as they grabbed control. Over 20,000 people crowded the seats night after night, yelling, singing, and waited for the opening chord. Their performances changed dramatically in the 2000s. Wild excitement, enormous stages, and fireworks. It had the feel of a country soul wrapped around a rock spectacle. Bands experienced it rather than only attending. Every tour felt larger than the last, and sold-out venues served as their second home. Dunn and Brooks disregarded the regulations. They were rewritten. The ACM Triple Crown Award followed, which is even more uncommon. Few people ever understand it. Throughout your career, you must earn awards for Top New Artist, Top Singing Pair, and Entertainer of the Year. It's more than just success. Dominance is that. Dunn and Brooks did it, too. They fulfilled every need, from their first significant break to becoming the face of country music. It was a unique kind of profession that started out strong and continued to rise. But being in one lane wasn't all that Ronnie was about. He collaborated on Building Bridges with Sheryl Crow and Vince Gill in 2006. It was magic, not merely a team effort. People stopped to listen as their voices blended together. That song proved something significant, earned prizes, and peaked at the top of the charts. Ronnie Dunn was a formidable opponent. Pop and country were irrelevant. He didn't have to alter his identity. With anyone who dared to stand next to him, he simply brought his sound and made it work. Nevertheless, the pressure was increasing behind the shouting audience and stage lights. Brooks and Dunn released 11 studio albums, 50 singles, and traveled virtually non-stop between 1991 and 2009. It began to catch up by the late 2000s. They had sold more than 30 million records and were receiving award after award, more than 75 in all. However, the cost was exorbitant. Kix and Ronnie were worn out. They even started recording with several producers in various studios. It wasn't resentment. Burnout was the cause. Too much. Too quickly. Too long. On stage, they always appeared to be one. However, the strain of expectations began to wear them down off stage. What had started off as a strong alliance evolved to resemble a business transaction. Compromises were more difficult. They needed time apart. By the late 1990s, fissures were beginning to appear. Years passed before they eventually separated, and there were times when they nearly did. Nevertheless, they continued. For the fans, not for themselves. They realized that what they had created was important to millions of people, so they overcame the pressure. The country music industry was taken aback in August 2009. Following more than 2 decades of successful tours, Brooks and Dunn declared their retirement. A silent, cryptic message: no arguments, no controversies. Let's end the day now. The fans were perplexed. Industry people were taken aback. After all, this combo received more CMA honors than any other duet in history and sold over 30 million albums. They were enormous. Their last performance at Nashville's Bridgestone Arena on September 3, 2010, seemed to mark the end of an era. However, it wasn't merely the close of a chapter for Ronnie Dunn. It was the start of a personal maelstrom that he never anticipated. Dunn felt lost without the Brooks and Dunn name. He had been moving like a machine for years. Tour, record, and repeat. The machine stopped now. He subsequently remarked, "Without the brand, I didn't know who I was." It was like getting off a moving train and entering a void. There were no lights for the first time in decades. No safety net and no crowds. He put out solo music, but it didn't feel the same. He started to doubt everything. His writing, his voice, and his value. The assurance that had seemed so firm began to erode. The refusal followed. At one point, country radio, which was obsessed with him, hardly listened. Younger names, fresh faces, and fresh sounds suddenly dominated the charts. The voice of the moment was no longer Dunn. According to one insider, it hurt a lot that radio wasn't hugging him. He felt as though he no longer mattered, not because he required fame. He referred to it as his career's lowest time. Being marginalized was painful for a man who had contributed to the development of contemporary country music. The quiet grew louder. Being by himself was strange and difficult for a man who was accustomed to being in the spotlight. He said that he thought it might be the end of it. Perhaps that was it, I thought. He suggested that I might have had my moment already. He was frightened by that concept. He began writing exclusively for himself after quitting writing for radio. And something started to change in that silence. The music began to sound authentic and unadulterated, just like him. And soul-filled. Ronnie Dunn made a daring move in 2011 after serving as one half of the renowned Brooks and Dunn for decades. For the first time in his career, he took center stage by himself. On June 7, 2011, his solo first album, simply titled Ronnie Dunn, was released. Additionally, it detonated rather than merely making noise. On the Billboard Top Country Albums chart, the album immediately raced to the top and reached the 5th position on the Billboard 200. It sold over 45,000 copies in its first week. Bleed Red, the lead single, became an unexpected breakthrough and peaked at number 10 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart. The fact that Dunn did not write the song himself is even more unexpected. It wasn't common. However, its message of forgiveness, healing, and unification struck a chord. After a severe recession, America was still having difficulties. Honesty was what people needed. And Dunn said it in a voice that was still full of strength. Rather than being cautious, he pushed harder. He published Peace, Love, and Country Music in 2014. He also completed it according to his own conditions. It was an incredible record. It combined rock, blues, country, and even electronic dance music. There was a dubstep drop in the song Country This. No one anticipated that. He stunned everyone once more in 2016 when he covered the mainstream song Tattooed Heart by Ariana Grande. Before hearing it, the majority believed it to be a joke. Collaborations with longtime friends like Reba McEntire and even Kix Brooks were featured on the CD. Then he released Redone in 2020. An album of covers honoring his heroes. Sang everything from George Strait to Tom Petty. 3 albums and 3 daring swings demonstrate that Dunn wasn't scared to upend the country music industry, even if it meant upsetting some people. He had to take a chance that most artists his age would never dare to take in order to pull it off. He started his own label in 2014 after leaving the major label system. Records of Little Will E. His dad's nickname inspired the moniker, which was a little personal homage encased in a significant professional risk. However, Dunn needed independence more than he wanted it. He at last had complete creative authority under his own label. No executive approvals or corporate filters. He avoided traditional outlets and instead published his music digitally, reaching people directly. It was an extreme action, particularly in Nashville, but it was successful. He was able to breathe and create without hindrance because of his independence. However, the single route was not without its challenges. Dunn struck a hurdle following the release of his debut album. His longtime label, Arista Nashville, underwent a significant reorganization. All of a sudden, Dunn's promotional strength was diminished. Radio stations in the country saw him as a newbie. He was suddenly ignored by programmers who had previously commended him. He was starting afresh at the age of 58 in a cruel industry that was fixated on youth and trends. Despite his name, voice, and background, he had trouble getting airplay. The truth was harsh. Being famous doesn't make you immune to forgetfulness. When Brooks and Dunn parted ways in 2010, they were done. However, something changed in December 2014. The country music community was taken aback by an unexpected news. Reba McEntire would return with Kix Brooks and Ronnie Dunn for a residency in Las Vegas. Together in Vegas is what they dubbed it. It seemed as though time had stopped when the spectacle debuted in June 2015 at Caesars Palace's Coliseum. They still had a certain chemistry. More powerful than before. People came in droves to witness it. By 2017, it had generated over $50 million in revenue from the sale of over 300,000 tickets. It wasn't merely a concert that the fans were watching. They were witnessing the rewriting of history. The gigs even had electric nostalgia, according to Rolling Stone. It was more than just a return. They made a statement and made it possible for other country music artists to follow them to Las Vegas. They continued after that. They did something that most legends don't do in 2019. Their sound was altered. Reboot was the name of the album. They didn't do it alone, they recreated old hits rather than rehashing them. Casey Musgraves, Luke Combs, Kane Brown, and Thomas Rhett were among the new generation they brought in. Every song was a modern take on a timeless tune, combining contemporary country sheen with vintage twang. Although it was hazardous, it was successful. Reboot peaked at the top of Billboard's Top Country Albums list on April 20, 2019. Their first #1 album in 10 years was that one. More than 21,000 units were transferred in its first week. Millions of streams came in. It was praised by critics. A master tutorial in musical renewal, according to NPR. And all of a sudden, both new and old admirers were unified by a single sound. Dunn and Brooks weren't simply returning. They had grown in size. They finally received the recognition they had long deserved that same year. They were admitted into the Country Music Hall of Fame on October 20, 2019. Legends like Dolly Parton and Johnny Cash now had their names inscribed alongside them. Dunn and Brooks both refrained from crying throughout the ceremony. From little Nashville concerts to the world's largest stages, it had been a long road. But it was all in the statistics. 20 #1 songs, more than 30 million albums sold, and a record 17 CMA Vocal Duo of the Year honors. They had done something that no other country pair had done. No one could now dispute their historical position. Their sound, which was a combination of rock, honky-tonk, and radio-friendly pop, influenced the country music of the 1990s and 2000s. They were more than simply stars that evening, they were symbols. Years went by, but they remained constant. They returned in 2024 with Reboot 2. It had the same concept, classic songs reimagined with current celebrities. Neon Moon, an eerie duet with Lainey Wilson that caught fire, was one particularly noteworthy performance. Once more, the record pushed the envelope. And it was successful as previously. They once again won Vocal Duo of the Year at the 2024 CMA Awards, shocking everyone in the room. They had won the category 18 times. Another record. 5 years is not long enough for most artists to remain relevant. For more than 30 years, Brooks and Dunn had done it, and not by being cautious. They took risks, adjusted, and continued to change. In a field that moves quickly and forgets even more quickly, that is what maintained them at the top. Perhaps, though, their greatest influence extends beyond the theater. They have assumed a new function in recent years. Mentors. In particular, Ronnie Dunn has advocated for assisting up-and-coming artists in achieving success. And it hasn't only been conversation. They have toured with newcomers. They have worked together. When no one else would, they provided them with a platform. The Brooks and Dunn Next Generation project was started in 2023. It provided information, guidance, and support to artists attempting to succeed in a challenging industry. They wanted country music to embrace a wider range of sounds, faces, and narratives rather than merely expanding. In addition to selling records, Rolling Stone referred to them as leaders since they created opportunities for others to succeed. Ronnie Dunn had no intention of dying in a hospital bed in December 2024. What was supposed to be a leisurely ski vacation in Colorado became a nightmare at the age of 72. He went down hard. The extent of the damage was so severe that a total knee replacement was necessary. 12 hours were spent on the surgery. Haley, his daughter, uploaded a video of her father taking a stroll just 30 minutes later. Attempting to smile, he posted a joke on the internet while still high. At 72, I might want to change I don't dance to I probably shouldn't ski anymore. But there was a serious blow behind the joke. Everything had to be cancelled by him. He received strict directives from doctors. For 8 weeks, there would be no traveling, no singing, and no stage. The fans were taken aback. Dunn and Brooks had received their 15th CMA award only a few weeks prior for the year's best singing pair. Half of the group was now relearning how to walk. He returned to the stage in April 2025, but something was different. While performing Boot Scootin' Boogie at a sold-out event in Indianapolis on April 3, Ronnie abruptly halted in the middle of the encore. "Sing it if you know it," he continued, glancing out at the audience before waving and touching his chest. And left. No farewell. No justification. At that precise moment, a TikTok video went viral online. He had complained of respiratory difficulties earlier that evening. A few weeks prior, he discussed his recovery from strep throat and COVID-19 at a performance in Texas. He appeared exhausted, according to some in the crowd that evening. He was sitting during songs, as some people noticed. For someone who is known for constantly moving on stage, this is uncommon. Everyone could see he wasn't feeling well, yet the tour continued. He wasn't just recuperating from surgery, it turns out. In addition, he was battling 2 infections. In early 2025, he was simultaneously afflicted with strep throat and COVID-19. He was unable to sing a single note for nearly 2 weeks. He was taking antibiotics, steroids, and vocal rest. The respiratory issues also persisted. He was still not entirely recovered by March. He acknowledged in one interview that he was still dealing with certain COVID-related respiratory problems. Receiving both viruses at his age, following knee surgery, felt like the cosmos was against him. Supporters were concerned. Supporting messages were posted by other musicians. Everyone was aware of how uncommon it was to experience both ailments simultaneously. And the potential threat. After 30 years of Brooks and Dunn performances, fans started to notice something as spring progressed. Sitting there was Ronnie Dunn. A great deal. He can be seen collecting his breath on stools and leaning on speakers in films from their 2025 performances. The audience also took note. People posted stuff like "he muscled through it" and "he was hurting" on social media. He also sounds as though he is having trouble breathing. They weren't merely bad evenings. This was a slower, quieter, and more delicate rendition of Ronnie. But he continued to appear. He persisted despite his legs giving out or his voice cracking. Finally, he raised his voice. In interviews and online, he was honest with his admirers. He wasn't giving up, but he was still recovering. He vowed to continue singing for as long as he could. He expressed gratitude to his family, crew, and devoted fans. That honesty struck a deeper chord with many than any performance. He wasn't merely enduring the agony. He was showing it to others. They loved him even more as a result. Behind the scenes, Ronnie has always had his family as a pillar of support. In 1990, he wed Janine. Dunn and Brooks were born in the same year. Jesse, Whitney, and Harley are the 3 children they have raised together. They have 5 grandchildren as of 2024. He spends his free time at the barn, a 600-acre farm close to Nashville. There, he arranges large family dinners, fishes, and observes baby eagles. He's escaping. For decades, Janine, who was widowed prior to meeting him, has been his pillar of support. Janine encouraged Brooks to pursue a solo career during their separation. He has consistently stated that none of it would have succeeded without her. And they grew closer when their daughter beat cancer. They have maintained their groundedness despite their stardom, which is uncommon for musicians. His musical career is self-evident. 30 ACM honors, 24 number 1 hits, and more than 30 million records sold. The Hall of Fame. He has received inductions into the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Arkansas Entertainers Hall of Fame, and the Oklahoma Hall of Fame in 2025. He stands in awe, humbled, thankful, and frequently moved at every occasion. He even complimented his therapist during one speech. Because music has always been important to Ronnie. His second love was photography. The Lensman Project is a major aspect of him, not just a pastime. He photographs animals, open-air aircraft, and cowboy life. His photos have appeared in galleries, periodicals, and even the Hall of Fame for country music. He began giving the American Cancer Society a portion of the revenues after his daughter fought kidney cancer. He spent more time outside during the epidemic with a camera than a microphone, and for some reason, he found solace in the silence. He has recently shifted his focus to mental health. He's talked candidly about pressure, tiredness, and breaking points. He didn't hide when he left the stage in April. He discussed it. "I need to rest," he remarked. Other musicians listened to that occasion. He supports the Music Health Alliance and participates in Heal the Music Day. Furthermore, his honesty demonstrated to others what true strength looks like for someone who made a career on it.